met Maharaj when you came for the pastimes of Bharat Maharaj, that Bhakti Vikasa Swami Maharaja created a program, a drama for that, and we rented out PCC Rock Creek. We did, and we had a very nice event there, and met Maharaj and got to know him a little bit. And then Maharaj was very kindly come very regularly, even when you were in the US, and then now the home base has become essentially Europe. So Maharaj is at the center of School of Bhakti Vikasa Maharaj. And Maharaj has this unique quality of looking for the essential in our practices and our consciousness, and trying to connect to others in a non-sectarian way that's more inclusive and addresses fundamental values that all living beings hold. And so, I don't know what the topic is going to be today, but I'm sure it's going to be something
very essential.
Very essential. Well, Maharaj embodies that quality of what Krishna Lounge Swami says, that eloquence is the truth spoken concisely. So, my humble request is to be honored Maharaj by listening to his lecture. Lecture sounds kind of heavy-handed, but in the discourse like this, very carefully, and let us try to pay attention to the message and not only the consciousness behind the message. So let's welcome Maharaj with a loud Hare.
Hare Bol! Hare Bol! Hare Bol!
I also wanted to say, today happens to be Arjun's birthday, so I don't know whether we'll have some celebration for Arjun's birthday, but I'm sure there'll be something. Stay tuned. Thank you, Bill, for your treatment.
I have prepared a really nice presentation for you.
No power.
I remember last time I was here, I think this is the same group of the three of you that sang and played instruments. That was pretty good that you managed to sing that without the help of a harmonium and without missing notes. Yeah, it's a very demanding tune, goes all over the place. Yeah, very well. Let me take about 30 seconds to offer respects to my spiritual teachers. Om Jnana-timirandasya Vinaya Shrapaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavansya Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parayana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Radha Shri Sahanvitam Amchakalpatarabhyasya Kripa Sindhubhya Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. We have to stop somewhere. There's a lot of mantras. Vaisheshika Prabhu, when he starts to recite mantras, seems a long time. So, somewhere or other, this Srimad Bhagavatam seems to be quite relevant. And even though in certain elements the message is if not the same, very often very, very similar. But just because it tells it from a different point of view, I always have a different experience of it and find the new relevance of the very same lesson. And I was thinking of one point it was a Maharaj, at one point it was a demon, at one point it was Vidyadhara, King Chitraketu. Okay, what do we know of Chitraketu from the Bhagavatam? That's a question to the esteemed audience. I hope you didn't think I was going to give the lecture. Just anything. What do we know of Chitraketu? Does anyone remember reading this in the Bhagavatam? Not any little thing. What do we know of Chitraketu? Vritrasura. That in one point ended up being a demon by the name Vritrasura. Did you, who knew this? Okay. Very interesting. What else do we know of Chitraketu? He was cursed by Mother Parvati to become the demon Vritrasura.
She thought he was laughing at her, although he was not.
Okay, because she thought he was laughing at her, and actually was. I think he was. What do you think he wasn't? I mean, laughing, that's a good question, right? Whether he laughed or not. I mean, in the Bhagavatam says that he actually laughed, but what that precisely meant, that's probably something we could talk about and not agree upon. What else do we know of Chitraketu? It was lamenting for not having a child. We're sort of right heavy, nothing from the left side or the back side. Is this where the concentration of knowledge is? Yeah, he was lamenting for not having a child, and very specifically not having a male child, not having a son, which I don't think it's often understood. I mean, sometimes it's hard to understand people of one civilization looking at them from the point, from another civilization. Yes, again, we're continuing with our right hand heaviness. Yes.
He also showed how devotees react to
Oh, very well.
hard situations.
Very well. He
How
also
he acts.
showed how to react. That's also very well. Yeah, very good. Noted. We will revisit that. If I don't, remind me. Yes. Please strike a balance. We're yogis. We need balance.
In Srila Prabhupada's pastime, when Srila Prabhupada's mother passed away, so his father told him about Mother Chitraketu's pastime.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Could you tell me?
That was from
more?
Avacharan. That was released by His Holiness Bhakti Maharaj.
Charu Maharaj,
So
okay.
in that drama, I mean, it was shown that when Srila Prabhupada's mother passed away, he was very sad.
Mhm.
And then Srila Prabhupada's father, he saw him very sad, and then he narrated to him all the Chitraketu pastime of Srimad Bhagavatam.
Oh, wow. How appropriate. I guess that's a really good time to hear the story of Chitraketu when you find yourself in such a situation. I mean, in a sense, we could say that the life of Chitraketu is our own life. You know, when the life is stretched over a period of good number of years, whatever, you know, that's very relative. What's a good number of years? So for some people, the lifespan is really short, for others, let's say, too long. Depends whether they're enjoying or suffering. Those who enjoy, they think life is too short, and those who suffer, they think it's way too long. But because we're not always capable of viewing life as a totality, we may not be able to see something which we would otherwise see if we would have the ability to view life in a more, the totality of it, but in a more condensed form. Then the patterns become more obvious. And that's sort of what happens to us when we read the story of Chitraketu. And I would also encourage you, once you have read the story of Chitraketu with Prabhupada's and other Vaishnavas' commentaries, read it once without purports. So that because if you read it without purports, then you maintain the rhythm of the Bhagavatam, just as the Bhagavatam tells it. And then it really hits you. At least it did me. And I will try to hit you now. The life of Chitraketu is a roller coaster. And in the Bhagavatam, it begins from the end. It begins with the story of Vritrasura. And what's interesting with this story is that things do not seem to be, they're not what they seem to be. In other words, what we have there is a clash of a divine being and a demonic being. And then, as you read the story, you're wondering, who's divine here and who's demonic? At the end, it seems that Indra, who's supposed to be not only a divine being, but the king, the representative, the leader of the divine beings, seemed to be not as divine as the person was presented as demonic. But then at the end turns out to be actually a divine being. And displaying one interesting quality. I have quite a few. One of them is devotion to the Lord. The other one is obtuseness to the duality of this world. Whereas what we find there in that story is Indra is the one. Indra is one who's drawn into the dualities of this world, namely the pain and pleasure in this world, and trying to run away from pain and try to embrace the pleasure and make sure the pleasure stays. But somehow this guy who's a demon is not doing that. And quite the opposite to Indra is actually fearless. And even at the threat of loss of his life, is smiling at the opportunity of living or dying. Very interesting. And as they fought, it seemed more like he was about to meet his own death, and he was jubilant about it. And so then the hearer of the Bhagavatam is wondering, that's a very rare quality in this world. Typically, that's the mother of illusion, according to the Bhagavad Gita. The duality of this world is the mother of illusion. And so he's wondering, well, how in the world does someone become like that? That's super rare. To have devotional qualities and to be transcendental, especially to the dualities of this world. Like, how did it? And then, at that point, we hear the life of Vritrasura before becoming Vritrasura. And now we have the story that begins with the life of a king by the name of Chitraketu, who, for God's sake, is described in the Bhagavatam says that he had 10 million wives. Quite a few. I'm not one of those technicians. Some devotees are technically super proficient. I only assume that this story is not taking place in Kali Yuga, but maybe some other age when people lived longer lives. So, nevertheless, he had a lot of wives, and by none of them he could have a son. And what's interesting, the Vedic concept of life and civilizations based on the Vedic concept of life say that life is meant for sacrifice, whether you want it or not. The only question is whether you're going to sacrifice willingly or unwillingly. but the life itself is transient. It means it's taken away. And always goes somewhere, goes into kids, goes into this, that, the other. I don't know if you noticed, but whether you want it or not, it's meant for sacrifice. And so you better embrace it. And so life is meant for, that's the Vedic concept. And so people who are Vedically civilized, they never live merely for their own pleasure. Never. And so even this hankering for a son is not an empty, vain hankering for a son. But it comes from a king who was an educated person who knows that his role is to organize the citizens, and that he, as a Kshatriya, needs to have a son to continue this very important service. And he's not having one. So even his motivation is not too bad. It's actually pretty good. Of course, we could postulate that his motivation might have been tinged with other urges, needs, interests. Okay. But the interesting point is that he did have a very legitimate reason why to want to have a son. And because he could not have one, he endeavored, more and more. 10,000, one by one, he married 10 million wives, and still could not have a son. And at this point, a sage comes, Angira. Almost forgot his name. The sage Angira shows up, and as the thing is with sages, now some good is going to come from it. The sage asks him about his well-being, and there's some niceties exchanged to speed up the story. Angira gives him a blessing or a curse. Gives him, was it sweet rice? I forget what it was, some yagya shishta, remnants of a yagya that was performed, that he would give to one of his wives, who would consume it, honor it, eat it, and become pregnant with a son, who would become the next king. And the sage gives the son name Harsha Shoka. Very interesting name. Harsha means jubilation, and Shoka means exactly the opposite. I think I was exactly that to my own parents. A little bit of both. I did apologize to them once I reached maturity for all the trouble given. And so, to speed up the story, now he has 10 million queens, and he has to choose one. he chooses one, she consumes that, she becomes pregnant, delivers a boy. The king, the queen are jubilant out of their minds. The remaining queens, not so much. Especially as the time went on, they were feeling envious, they were feeling neglected. The king was giving all of his attention to one queen, to one child, which so they weren't the queen anymore. They received no attention. They had no children. I mean, their envy became so intense. It's interesting how Chitraketu and his one wife, one queen, became so absorbed in the happiness of this child, they forgot everything else. And they didn't even notice what was happening, namely that the other queens were becoming very, very, very unhappy. Their minds became darkened, so darkened that they did the unimaginable. They murdered the child. They poisoned the child, for God's sake. I mean, sometimes when you read a story, then you don't feel the closeness of it because it's just a story. But if you really think of what happened, it's pretty intense. And so now when the queen and the king find the child one morning not alive, the pain you cannot describe. The description in the Bhagavatam conveys a lot, but I mean, who can understand the pain of a parent who's lost a child, and especially this kind of a child that they were waiting for such a long time. It is described in the Bhagavatam that they were going insane due to the pain. And so when the pain reached this level, the sage Angira showed up. And I think at this time he was accompanied by Narada Muni. And so the two of them actually, they didn't appear as sages, but just as some people. Anyhow, they addressed the king. The sage Angira gave him the transcendental knowledge, invited him to think about the nature of things and so on. And not to repeat all of those teachings, but Chitraketu sobered up. Chitraketu sobered up. In one point even Sage Angira brought the child back to life, and there was some conversation with, I think the child even said, when he was invited to return to his parents, he said, "Which parents? I have had many parents." So all of this sobered up Chitraketu. And then Narada Muni gave him a mantra to recite. And by reciting this mantra, he pleased God, the Supreme Being, Vishnu. Even there's a description how Vishnu appeared before Chitraketu. There was the exchange between them. And you would think, okay, this is the end of the story. Like, Chitraketu then becomes Vidyadhara, this heavenly being that travels around the world singing the glories of God. A lot of people follow him. What is interesting, in the Bhagavatam it says a lot of women too, which is interesting because what happened just shortly after, where he criticized Lord Shiva for having a woman with him, and yet he had lots of women following him everywhere. you would think this is the end of the story. Here we have a being that's understood the duality of this world, how things go up and then they go down. But no, the chain of lessons continue. And some or other, in all of his wanderings, he chances upon a gathering of people, not just any people, but sages, a group of sages, who are addressed by Lord Shiva. And while addressing them, Lord Shiva has his own wife sitting in his lap. And Chitraketu laughs. He said, "But this is funny, unusual. I don't remember exactly the words Bhagavatam says Chitraketu uttered upon seeing this. But something like, this is unusual. While addressing the sages, Lord Shiva has a wife sitting in his lap. That's a bit unusual. How is this so?" And interesting, Bhagavatam says that the reaction of Lord Shiva was just a smile. He always reminds me of, in the Bhagavatam, few times when the illusory energy is described as a smile of the Lord. Bewildering smile. So we could say that the smile of Lord Shiva there was bewildering. Like, what does this mean? But he had no reaction. And what's interesting, then the Bhagavatam says that following his example, all the other, everyone else, the sages gathered there, following his example, did nothing. But some or other, Lord Shiva's wife was very disturbed and did not follow the example of Lord Shiva. As a matter of fact, she felt like she should not only defend Lord Shiva, but she should set things straight, because this is not right, this is not just. And then she says a few things which are very true. She says that if you think yourself important, you don't have the right to be at the feet of the Lord. If you think yourself important. And what's interesting, commenting upon this, all of the Vaishnavacharyas agree. If you think yourself important, you don't. And she's saying, what do you think? What do you think who you are? This is Lord Shiva, and don't be so quick to shoot. It's not that the world all of a sudden needs a police officer, a Hare Krishna police officer, to police other Hare Krishna followers, which is sometimes what we do. And so she curses him to become a demon. And then his reaction is that Bhagavatam says that even though he was a person capable of fighting back, resisting, cursing back, he did none of it. Rather, he accepted it. But it's interesting what he said, why he accepted it. He said, by now he's understood. He's got it. There are no enemies or friends in the world. Like, this is how the world is designed. The way this world is designed, you get harsha and then you get shook. Whether you want it or not. And if you allow your life to be reduced to that, you've missed the point. So the message of the Bhagavatam is not that we should not deal with what some devotees say, that we should not deal with the dualities of this world. I don't think that's the message. The message is rather that I mean, for God's sake, if you have a child and the child has a cold, you don't just say, oh, that's just shoka, harsha will follow. No, you administer medicine, you're worried, that's how it goes. I mean, look at the life in this world. You have to be financially responsible. If you might have noticed, you can't just be irresponsible. You have to be financially responsible in this world. But if you allow it to consume your life, that you live for it, then the illusion has done its thing on you. Rather, the point of these ups and downs is to understand the lesson. And the lesson is twofold, we could say. One is that that underneath the surface is the substance. The surface is an ever-changing wrong, and there's nothing we can do about it. It has always been like that, it is, and most likely it will continue like that. But below that ever-changing surface is the steady surface, or the absolute surface of the Atma, of God, of Bhakti, of the goal of life. And one who loses connection with the steady, with the substance, that which stands under, has allowed this illusion of duality to steal ultimately the only treasure. Nunam pramatta kurute vikarma yad indriya pritaya aprinoti, maddened by the sensual perception. What's the verse after that? Parabhavastadabodha jato najigyasata eva tatma najigyasata atma tattva. That one who does not inquire about atma tattva experiences parabhava, defeat. And in which way? First, in the way that the duality keeps going, and at the end there's death. And so if you allow yourself to invest all of your money into this, at the end you lose. That is parabhava. And the other one is that you do become attached, and you do feel aversion. And so therefore you're actually living a life of deep disturbance. Fear, some say that fear is the most basic emotion beings in this world experience. Fear. And that's because of the duality. And if you don't have ability to grab onto, detect, find, grab onto something which is steady in this life, then first you're always disturbed, like Chitraketu, and then at the end you anyways die. So there's a rational, there's a philosophical, and there's emotional need for the existence of the absolute Brahm, the divine Brahm. And Chitraketu got it. But what's interesting, he had to go through all of those experiences. And it seems like more you go through such experiences, better you get it. Unfortunately. Another good example is perhaps Bharata. same thing, up, down, and then he got it. And having gone through several ups and downs, he became this super determined person who became Jadabharata, who ignored the world to like no one ever. even when people wanted to cheat him, he just ignored it. He was so absorbed in the absolute reality of things that he ignored the world of good and bad like no one ever before. Even when the dacoits came to literally take his life, he ignored it. In Greek tradition, we have the story of Socrates. Does anyone know perhaps the life of Socrates? He was made to drink poison. Not so much. That's a very European example. Yeah, Socrates was perhaps the most influential figure on the Western philosophy. And he was made to drink poison because he wouldn't sell out. There was a pressure from the city of Athens for him to take his words back, but he wouldn't. So they gave him poison to drink, and he drank it. And he was completely calm and collected. And everyone were disturbed as to how are you so not disturbed? And he said that I'm not a body. I'm a soul. That's why that book is called On the Soul. It says, I'm not a body, I'm a soul. And the soul is in the body, not as a reward, but as a punishment. The soul is incarcerated in the body. And if someone wants to relieve me from this incarceration, I can hardly wait. And he said that this is the view of a philosopher. And by the way, back then the term philosopher didn't mean just someone who thinks a lot, but someone who loves life. And life meant eternally. It was a spiritual concept. And therefore one investigates life, among other means also intellectual. So in many ways, Srila Prabhupada made all of us philosophers. Made us think about life, value life, and very specifically transcendental life. And so we find there is yet another example of someone who was exposed to, at one point he was the most famous citizen of the city of Athens. And then the next moment he was the one to be executed. He was okay with it, unfazed by both. And if you read that little book, I forget its title, but original title, in due course of time became known as On the Soul. It's almost like reading Bhagavad Gita. You wonder where he got it from. Even his arguments as to is one of the people that was in there with him asked them, well, what if you're not a soul? How do you know you are a soul? And then he explained his conviction. Where does the conviction come from? That everyone is a soul. That we're not a body, but actually spirit souls. And so Krishna consciousness has this gift to us, to give us something to live for, not merely be drowning in the ocean of giant waves of harsha and then shock. But we actually have something to live for beyond that, while obviously being forced to deal with with the heights of these waves and billows of it. In that section of the Bhagavatam, we find this very famous verse, which I believe Lord Shiva said, while marveling about being wondering how amazing the character of Chitraketu is. He stated, Narayana parasarve na kutaschana bibyati swarga apavarga narakeshu api tuli arta samadarshina. Samadarshi, one who sees sameness, has the eyes of sameness. And who is that? That's Narayana Para, the devotee of Lord Narayana. So that's one characteristic. In the Bhagavad Gita, that's also described as a characteristic of the highest of yogis, who's later on described as a devotee. Yam hi navyatayantiyete purushashava sama sukham dukham dhiram so amritatvaya kalpate. That the preliminary qualification for transcendence is to be like Chitraketu at the end. So Narayana parasarve, wherever they go, nakutaschana bibyati, they're not afraid. No fear. It's a tall order. Typically when the sun goes down, it's some fear. Depends where we find ourselves. Svarga apavarga narakeshu, whether heaven, hell, middle planetary systems, doesn't matter. Api tuli arta darshan. Darshan means seeing with tuli arta. Arta is value, tuli means same value. Also in the Bhagavad Gita, whether the devotee sees a rock or dirt or gold, or sees with the same eyes, like that. Api tulyartha darshinaha, such is the devotee of the Lord. And then I think you mentioned that good quality of sadhu lakshana, which is in the Bhagavatam described at the end of this story as Chitraketu departs. Sadhu lakshana, that he did not retaliate, he did not fight it, but he accepted the destiny. Now again, I don't think that the message of the Bhagavatam is that we accept everything as destiny. Rather, we need to deal with this world, but once we have done our part, then we accept the rest as destiny. We say it is in Lord's hands. And of course, this is easy to say. What's required is that actually one does have experience of the presence of God in one's own life, in order to be able to cut through the pleasant and unpleasant of the existence. So-called rewards and so-called punishments. Oh, maybe one more thing and then I'll end there. Chitraketu, when he was cursed, he said, there are no friends or enemies. All this is happening because it had to be so. And he's not saying this just because he's a new ager who thinks everything's by divine providence and there's nothing I can do about it. But he's understood the mechanism. Therefore speaks from reality. There's no enemies or friends. This is also stated in the beginning of the Bhagavatam by Dharma, the bull. If you remember, Dharma, the bull, in the beginning there was this menacing dark person who beat his legs, and the cow's legs too. But these legs are described to be destroyed. Just one leg was left. And when Parikshit came onto the scene, I asked him, who has done this? And he said, difficult to say. What do you mean difficult to say? This guy over here.
No, but he's seeing through things. He saw that guy just as an instrument of something behind. Often Bhagavatam repeats this message. So in this way one gets a bit more of a divine vision of the world. Looking at the world from a higher perspective. Chitraketu said, this material world resembles the waves of a constantly flowing river. Therefore, what is a curse and what is a favor? Waves of a constantly flowing river. That's his life. Therefore, what is a curse and what is a favor? Because he was cursed to become a demon, but it turned out to be a favor. He was blessed by the sadhu, but turned out to be a curse, which was not a curse, but a blessing. So, man, what's a curse and what's a blessing? What are the heavenly planets and what are the hellish planets? He's not sure anymore about anything. What is actually happiness and what is actually distress? It's also a very good question. Is happiness something that leads to pain? Yeah, it is, but no, it isn't. It's more of a trap. What do you call a little bit of food that you put in a trap in order to trap an animal? Bait. It's more of a bait. Because the waves flow constantly, none of them has an eternal effect. Therefore, you need to look elsewhere. So, okay, Om Tat Sat. Not to belabor the point, I shall end here and open the floor for a possible discussion. If anyone has a comment or a question, feel free to engage us maybe a few more minutes.
Summary of the pastime. Thank you, Maharaj, for such a nice summary.
You're louder than the microphone.
So, after getting darshan of Lord Vishnu, how is it that he did not, and you are absolutely right, by the way, there is that sort of understanding or misunderstanding that, but he was offensive, and there's no doubt about it.
It wasn't horribly offensive, but a little bit.
A little bit, yes. It wasn't like a...
It wasn't absolutely appropriate.
Correct. That's exactly correct.
But Lord Shiva was okay to tolerate, let it slide. But
right.
Parvati, no. And so even we have a sense that Parvati was also a little bit out of balance, perhaps.
Right.
Yeah.
And Sukadeva Goswami, I think there's a verse which says that he did not... He said offensive words. That's Sukadeva Goswami's version of it. So that nails it. My question is, how is it that he did not know the position of Lord Shiva? Because that's what's written as the reason in one of the commentaries, that he was not aware of his position, which is why he said that. How is that? What should we understand from that?
Yeah, good question. I don't recall anything very explicitly stated right there in that section that would answer your question. So I think we're left left to, God forbid, speculate. Not speculate in the sense like being wild speculators, but try to draw parallels. And as you were saying that, I remembered, for example, Daksha. If you remember that skirmish he had with Lord Shiva, you all remember that? It was quite bloody. I mean, it was intense. I mean, even he lost his head. And then later on, they screwed on the head of a goat. And this was like, Hare Krishna. And what's interesting, it's stated there that, after all that ordeal, he, having been brought to life now with not a human head, but a head of a goat, which, by the way, especially from the Vedic perspective, I mean, in Bengali, there's a saying, Chagal kina bole. No. Pagal kina bole, chagal kina khai. That was my Bengali. Any Bengalis here? No, I can sell you my Bengalis. That what a goat one eats and what a madman one say. So, goat is typically not looked at as a, goat's head is not the finest of heads you can have. But now that he looked at Lord Shiva, the Bhagavatam says, he became purified and started to have sweet feelings for Lord Shiva. And then you read that and you're thinking, for God's sake, I mean, didn't he see Lord Shiva when he entered the arena? I mean, he saw Lord Shiva, but he was hating him. Why didn't he love him back then? It was the same thing. No, first he needed to get some beating. Like Chitraketu, like most of us. It seems like we have to go through a fund of experiences. Fund of experiences. And then you come before the Lord or devotee and then you go, wow, what a value. I love you. Daksha stated that he looked at Lord Shiva with eyes filled with love. Because Shiva was this exalted person, pure devotee of God. Like that. And so same thing we could say, and we do say, that there is no difference between God and God's name. And some or other, we come in contact with God's name, and yet the heart, as the Bhagavatam says in the beginning, is steel framed. There's no unfortunately, I have to report that the best rounds I ever chanted typically were after I got some beating. Hare Krishna. Please, Krishna, don't give me any more of that medicine. But I'll probably get some more. So, yeah, good question. What do you think, Bob? How would you answer your own question?
One explanation is Leela, and the Lord wanted to accelerate his progress. But that answer is somewhere I feel is like your last resort.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the teaching is that we shouldn't misunderstand the position of Lord Shiva, and it's very hard to understand. Even such a person who has met Lord Vishnu, if he can understand what to speak of us.
Yeah.
Again, in the domain of speculation.
Yeah. No, those are very good lessons. Yeah, as you were saying that, I remembered um, uh, when the spiritual master of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was passing away, one of his no, Srila Ishvara Puri. No. Madhavendra Puri. So, yeah, correct. The the guru of the guru, yeah. Then Srila Ishvara Puri was the one to serve him, but he had another disciple who was quoting Bhagavad Gita. He was thinking, Madhavendra Puri, at the end of his life, is exhibiting the heights of Krishna consciousness, lamentation, spiritual lamentation. And his disciple was observing all of that and thinking of Bhagavad Gita that says one should not hanker or lament. Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma Nashochati Nakamshati, right? That's exactly how one should be. And then there he has his own guru lamenting. And in a sense what he said was true, but in another sense it was seriously inappropriate. Seriously inappropriate. Srila Ishvara Puri did not make that mistake. That's maybe an extreme example, but yeah, I guess we live in this world, and there is a good deal of responsibility on our shoulders. And one way or another, we'll learn it. We could maybe say that that's harsh or unjust, but it is. That's how it is. I don't know, like modern people really dislike responsibility for some reason. They always want to blame someone else for their own situation. But I don't think that's a very good solution. I don't want to relieve anyone of their responsibility either, but I am primarily the one who's responsible. And life just carries great importance, and we know this. If we don't do things right, we feel it. Yeah. Most of you here are of Indian descent, from judging externally by physical appearance. And I don't mean to flatter to you, but until I moved to the States, where I actually met people who came to the States from India, I did not really understand the comprehensiveness of the Vedic thought. Even though I knew the books which I read and reread, many times. But when I saw the culture, how people live, and how they live with great sense of responsibility, how the families, for the most part, turn out very cohesive and stable, and typically also economically stable, socially stable, religiously stable. Not absolutely stable, obviously. There's fluctuation, but for someone who grew up in a different culture, like for me, it was a great revelation. And very often people, when they read Prabhupada's books, when they refer to these elements of Vedic culture, they have a difficulty understanding, and they even find them oppressive for some reason. But life is oppressive, man. To be alive is a great responsibility. mean, we don't have to be sad about it. You embrace it and be happy, and you'll definitely be way more happy than if you just become a charlatan, funny fellow. Yes. Are you okay with? There was this. There was Mataji before you. Yes.
Thank you, Maharaj. So it's more of a curiosity than a question. So initially we were talking about Mother Parvati laughing at Chitraki. So I'm just curious because Mahadev is one of the greatest Vaishnavas we see, the devotee of the Lord. So Mother Goddess is Mother Parvati is also Vaishnavi. How could she behave in that way when she's a representation of a Vaishnava culture? Like how we emphasize on respecting or that other. So her behavior does not go with her personality if she laughed. So that's more like I'm more curious to know what made her do that in that situation.
Yeah. You all have these difficult questions. I quit my job. My job's so difficult. Yeah, I mean, that's a very good question. And I don't remember any very specific answer given in the Bhagavatam. But in the Bhagavatam, we have a lot more examples, like quite a few. I mean, right now I'm reminded of a very extreme example. I'm not even sure if I should say it. Brace for impact, I'll say it. Is this being streamed online?
No.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Yes. Oops. We have example given. What's the name of the priest, Pujari, priest of the demigods? Brihaspati. Do you know that Brihaspati raped a woman who was pregnant? And while attempting to do so, the child from within the womb, this is in the 9th canto of the Bhagavatam, speaks to him, don't do it. And he still does it. It's wild. So the Bhagavatam gives extreme examples, and what's interesting, in the domain of religion, we often encounter extreme examples. And the scholars of religion, they even have a term for these exaggerations. Not that they're exaggerations in the sense that they're not true or impossible or something like that, but they're just a lot of extreme examples which typically we do not encounter. They're super rare, if anything like it ever happens. And they, so I forget the term for it. There's a technical academic term for it, and they say that the point of these exaggerations is to better illustrate a point. Because when the example is extreme, then the point becomes more obvious. Like Brahma running after his own daughter. I mean, who does that? Actually, I know one person. Just I remember now. He spent a lot of time in jail, and he was a devotee, and actually still is a devotee. And over the many years, he tried to come back to the temple, but the community would never allow him to come to the temple. What's the message? Obviously, we're warned to try to be sober. And when we see something that resembles something from the Bhagavata, that may not be of the same intensity, but because we know the story of the great intensity, now we're able to recognize same system, but not as intense. And then the alarm goes off. Like the nature of kama, nature of krodha, nature of pride. I mean, it seems like even people who are very elevated are capable of falling prey to such, we could call them enemies. That's what comes to my mind at the moment. But if anyone else, would you like to add to that?
No, just trying to...
Oh, something different or same point? Yes, please.
Listening to it last, but one point stuck to me in this context. Even Chitraketu Maharaj is not an ordinary person as he is appearance of Vishnu himself. But one message I understood from this lecture which I heard, here the glorification of Vaishnava has been pointed out in that class. Because Lord Shiva also mentions, because the way Chitraketu Maharaj takes, as you mentioned, he has the capability to curse back to Mother Parvati, but he did not. He just accepted from that position, Gandharva till not demon, accepted the demon body. So Lord Shiva mentions only Vaishnava can do it.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, good point. Thank you. But what's interesting, sometimes we reduce Vaishnava just to an identification without the qualities of Chitraketu. But some or other one needs to develop that base that Chitraketu has. Then we speak of a, and that's how I see that. That Chitraketu understood that the world of ups and downs, it's the Lord's world, God's creation. That behind it, that it's an illusory curtain that has its role to play. And it's also a filtering system that keeps out those who have not learned the lesson. Or not learned it enough. Those who did, they go through it into the divine reality of Krishna and devotees. So, yeah, it's an ongoing process, and I think we all have experience of that it's an ongoing process. But yeah, that's a good point. Thank you. Are you okay with that?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Thank you so much, Maharaj, for that nice class. So you gave 3 examples, one of the bull and calf, and second one of this Chitraketu, and the third one was Jada Bharata, and all of them...
And Socrates.
like 3 of them stuck in my mind, and then I was thinking, when they were going through that pain, they were not saying that you are responsible, and you also said that it's not that... so my question was, who is responsible if we are getting some suffering? Who should we think is the responsibility on? Is it on us? Should we think, oh, it's because of my past karma I'm suffering? From these 3 examples, what is the conclusion from Srimad Bhagavatam?
Oh, very good. Luckily, I know the answer. Very same question is discussed in detail in the story of Avanti Brahmana. You anyone remember? Yeah, Avanti Brahmana. Because himself, the fellow takes sannyas, and then people start torturing him, and yet he does not respond. And then there we find a verse that repeats in the Bhagavatam at least 3 times, if not 5 times. I can't remember right now. Avidyamane pi, something. I never memorized it. I just heard it many times. Something avidya mane pi something. Something about living the life of a dream, and for someone who's pulled by this duality of illusions, that person continues to dream. And so the effects of a dream continue only with someone who's continuing to dream. When you wake up, there's no more effects of a dream. You know, like in the dream, you might be dreaming that you're found a golden brick. Then you wake up and the golden brick is gone. Or that lion is chewing on your foot. You wake up, no more lion, foot is there. But while you were asleep, it's very real. Avanti Brahmin asks himself, so what's the cause? And then he gives multiple causes. And so all of that is true. Yes, the Shudra who's beating the bull is the cause. There's not just one cause, there are multiple causes. But what's interesting, that according to the divine vision of the Bhagavatam, the causes are organized like in a pyramid, upside down or downside up, whichever way you want to think of it, you know. And then at the end of it is actually Krishna. Ishvara Sarva Sarva Karana Karanam, the cause of all causes, not a small statement. So therefore there's the immediate cause, there's the intermediate cause, there's the remote cause, and there's the ultimate cause. There's many causes along the way. And so someone who's in knowledge, someone who is in satya, in truth, in divine vision, would see all of the causes, and very specifically the ultimate cause. That's why we say this world is like this, that, and we describe it. But this world, despite being the way it is, has a purpose. And that God created it the way it is for a purpose. And the purpose is redemption of the soul. It's like a correctional institution. It's an educational facility where the soul takes birth until masters all of the lessons. Some people say that you have to keep taking the same lesson until you pass that lesson. So you have to get the passing grade in order to, and then once you got that lesson, then some other lesson is waiting.
With that answer, I feel, if I think with that particular example, I feel like I am a criminal and Krishna is a jailer. So in that way, in that way, I won't be able to love him. So devotees say, okay, if you are feeling some pain, you may think, okay, it's because of my karma. You should see Krishna as, and you're feeling something, you're having some good time. You should go, okay, thank you, Krishna. So with that particular example, I feel, okay, Krishna is a jailer and I am a criminal. But in that way, I won't be able to love Krishna. So, could you
I would have to disagree with you. I mean, there was a good shot. I mean, I applaud it. Thank you for thinking and churning things. That's what devotees do. So I applaud for that. But I would disagree with you in the following sense. Prabhupada, for example, said that only the thief is afraid of the police. If you're a decent citizen, you like police They're on your side. They're there to protect you from the other guy. So being a police officer, you said jailer, it's not a bad thing. It's actually a very beautiful thing. Just like parents who are not allowing the child to do the dumb thing. The child may, and children sometimes say that, I hate you. Among Indians, hardly, I've never heard that. So, does it happen? Yes. Mom, I hate you. But, if you were to leave it all up to the kid would eat gummy bears, 24/7 and die very soon. Toothless. But for some reason the child cannot understand the intent of the mother. But it's a loving attempt. I don't know how many of you read Bible, but Bible is one truly sad story of a parent who's trying to take his children onto the right path, but they don't want to. And Yahweh, the God of the Old Testament, is teaching them, go this way, and then they go for a while, and then they go astray. And then the God begs them, bribes them, punishes them, teaches them, exhausts all the options. And then at the end of the story of Yahweh's relationship with the tribe of Israel, he gives up. And he knows what giving up means. It means the dumb child will do the dumb thing and will suffer. But seems like I have to let him do that. So they part ways. The followers of God and God, they part ways, and the followers of God go to the beginning of the story, their demise, and fall into slavery yet again. And it's a very relevant story to all of our lives, like that. So, yeah, I think God is exactly in that situation. But once you see that, then you begin to appreciate. I cannot tell you. I always loved my parents. Only occasionally I hated them. It was short-lived. But once I matured a bit, and once I understood what nonsense I was, even though I was a child, then you could say like, okay, that's how kids are, I went back to my parents and I apologized to them. I cannot tell you the profound respect I discovered for my parents. So I would say that a devotee would go through similar experience, or someone who's trying to become a devotee. I know one devotee who, he was a great missionary. He was a brahmachari monk, let's say, and for many, many years, doing a lot of very impressive things, for the mission, for our mission, expanding the movement, extending the teachings, making them available to a whole lot of people. And then he had a slip. He slipped. He did something which you didn't want to do. Not a super horrible thing, but not a good thing, And he was angry with God. He was telling me all of this. He was like, why? why did you do this to me? And then withdrew from everything, and it would chant all day, night long. Would chant many, many rounds every day. Yeah. Then went on for some months, and then finally an answer came, and he could see why he had to go through it, and that he couldn't really blame anyone else. That became clear to him. Doesn't matter what he told me, but if the devotee goes through that and sees that, then his relationship with Krishna went very, very deep. Very dedicated devotee. But he had this slip, right, that resulted, he wasn't saying that in public, it was his internal experience. And me having been close to him, eventually he told me the whole experience. Okay, yes. How are we doing time-wise, if I can first ask? So we're not ruining anyone's plans.
I think, Maharaj, we can carry on.
Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. In the beginning of the class, you mentioned the Vedic perspective that life is meant for sacrifice. How are we supposed to take it in current times? Because the moment you hear the word sacrifice, at least it seems it has to be a difficult journey or suffering is somehow attached. So if you could expand, how can we practically practice it?
Good. You are right. That English term sacrifice very often sounds very gloomy and dark and unpleasant. No, sacrifice is a very Sanskrit term. In Sanskritam, the term is yajna, and yajna in the Bhagavad Gita is described as a process of self-realization. In other words, through sacrifice or living for something, you come to understand who you are, what life is, etc. Ultimately, God. As a matter of fact, the Bhagavad Gita says that if you want to know where to look for God, find Him in the place that where He is always, at all times, eternally, in the acts of sacrifice or yajna. And in English, for example, there is a term that there's a saying that if you have nothing to die for, you have nothing to live for. In other words, it's not that you're suffering because of it, you're actually enjoying your life. You have to have something to live for, something that draws your emotion, your love, your dedication, not fear. Fear it is a motivator, not the most sophisticated of motivators. Love, or bhakti, ultimately devotion, Krishna consciousness, is the ultimate motivator. And throughout history, you can see people who have been religiously or spiritually inspired, or you just don't find anyone else being inspired like that. Deep, deep, deep life of inspiration. So that is yajna, and the process of yajna is to get there. So, for example, if you think of varnas and ashramas, in the Bhagavatam, they're described as different parts of the body of God. And you maintain you might have noticed that people of India, more traditional they are, more they try to retain whatever they know. Of the varnas, especially ashrama, that sort of, but ashrama too. Why? Because if you live for it, you sacrifice for it. You're sacrificing for the long-term good of the whole society. Because Bhagavata paints this picture. If you have society organized in this fashion, the whole society globally goes towards God. And you can see this, you may know this Chakravarti. Chakravarti, one who makes the wheel turn, Chakravarti. Very often a term used for a ruler or a leader. One who makes the wheel of yajna turn. That's a leader in the Vedic concept. And so, Prabhupada often blamed the leadership of the world for world being so not sophisticated in their thoughts and actions. And it is because of the leaders that we have that our kids don't find sadhus to be examples to emulate, but rather people who can sing, dance, and be more naked than dressed. If you're from India, maybe some Bollywood figures. That's sad. So that's just one example of the value of the system of varnas and ashramas, which Srila Prabhupada spoke a lot about. Srila Prabhupada very specifically told us to sacrifice in the Sankirtana movement, Sankirtana, in varieties of ways. Again, it's a mission to turn the world, to move the world in the right direction. By everything we do, whether we print books, sell books, write articles, distribute prasadam, use our own brain how to do that, maintain our communities, maintain our families as bastions of health and spiritual vision, and to see all of it as parts of this yajna called Sankirtana Yajna. And Srila Prabhupada had a tremendous vision, not just a mere organization of few of our low communities and that we have a good time, but no, Prabhupada wanted to flood the world with this knowledge and organize the world according to this knowledge. So all of that is yajna. And you're very happy, like you get up in the morning and you have something to get up for, something super important. And we do this. I mean, what we're doing right now, it's also part of it. Bodhayanta parasparam katayantashtamam nityam tushanti cha ramanti cha. Are you okay with that? Okay.
It's okay.
Yes. Oh, Chakravarti. God doesn't want you to say it.
I think one way to understand that I've heard the pastime of Chitraketu Maharaj's interaction with Parvati and Shivji is, yes, he could be sarcastically making a comment about Lord Shivji. Another way is to say, how glorious is he that with the presence of his wife on his naked lap, he's yet able to engage with sadhus in a completely transcendental manner. So I think oftentimes reading Bhagavatam, one sees that Bhagavatam is not about ethical behavior, but about transcendental experience. I really appreciate the sensitivity with which you narrated the pastime of Chitraketu, Visura, etc. Because it demonstrates that. And that you talked about how, I really like the universality of how you presented the pastime. This is how to experience Bhagavatam as our sustainer in our life. Because no matter what religion one ascribes to, one has this experience of the ups and downs of life. And the essential question always is, why me? What happened? Where did things go wrong? And so that is, as you explained, that's a stimulus to experience Atma Tattva, or transcendence, as an absolute, essential, and relational necessity. And how to come to that, as pastime explains. We're in the material world, and God, by whichever name we call him, is in the transcendental world. So to experience that is an act of grace. Something that doesn't belong here is somehow manifesting its potency. And that's through the grace of the sadhu, where the apparent blessing may be a curse, and the apparent curse may be a blessing, a stimulus to, like you said, probe with Atma Tattva. That transcendental, my understanding is that transcendental experience is bhakti. That grace is bhakti, of Bhagwan in the spiritual world, ascending to those of us who are in the material world. Experience of eternality, absolute relationship, genuine relationship with the kind of that we possess as Atma. So I really appreciate your narration. I don't want to call it lecture, narration, kind of experiential hearing of Bhagavatam really touched my heart. I was very happy to hear it. And I felt all these links popping up into the nature of reality. And Jiva Goswami in the Sambhava explains that this pastime of Visura is explaining the nirguna quality of bhakti. So thank you very much. I'm really looking forward to hearing something more tomorrow.
Well, let's see what comes out of me tomorrow. Valuable.
Anybody else like this?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for giving us such a beautiful narration of this pastime. And I know between these Harsha and Sloka, Chitraketu Maharaj was kind of, steady in his devotional activity and was still showing the Vaishnava quality, and obviously for the first time some sadhus, when his son died, pacified him and he realized that, and in front of Lord Shiva and Mother Parvati again that quality exhibit. I'm drawing that a story to a parallel of King Dasrath from Ramayana. Seems going in parallel. He was also initially lamenting for a son. He did yajna. He got some offering to be given to the wife, and beautiful son, Lord himself came. So Dasratha is not an ordinary king. He is a devout devotee. But when the time came, he was more on the lamentation side, rather than being on the platform where the Harsha and Shekhar feelings came for him. How do we understand that matter?
But where did you grow up, if I may ask?
From India, in Bihar, especially on the region where Janakpur is Mithila region.
Just because of the accent, for a second, unrelated to, please forgive me for straying. We could relate back to Srila Ishvara Puri and him serving Madhavendra Puri, as opposed to, what was his name? Ramachandra Puri, who later on became a super Maha criticizer, like that. He couldn't understand the limitation of Madhavendra Puri. He couldn't understand the nature of transcendence. He thought that transcendence was empty, that was feelingless, that was... and sometimes the devotees also picture Prabhupada like this. That Prabhupada was transcendental, didn't feel pain. I don't think so. He felt pain and pleasure. I mean, you might have noticed, no matter how many rounds you chant, you're still going to feel pain and pleasure. But the difference is between the lamentation and hankering of a transcendentalist and someone who is not. Just like when you look at a devotee without eyes of knowledge, you could not recognize anything there. Sells things, eats, sleeps, loves, hates even. But when a devotee does that, devotee does it in a whole different capacity for a whole new, different set of reasons. So that whatever, it's on an absolute plane where it has absolute nature. Because it's centered around the absolute nature of things, including God, soul, relationship between the two, the nature of the domain of spirit, the quality of spirit. Prabhupada would get upset. Some people, very often people have this, Arjuna had this understanding in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, right? That being a sadhu is sort of a negation of life in this world. But it is not so. It's not a negation. That's a very impersonal, we would say, maybe even a Mayavadi concept of life. So when this one person, when he saw a bunch of money on the desk in front of Prabhupada, he was like, what kind of a sadhu is this? Because sadhu is supposed to not have anything to do with... No, devotee uses everything for Krishna. Did okay, Mr. Nair from Bombay, he thought this is a sadhu who's not attached. Therefore, I'll cheat him very easily. But he couldn't understand that Prabhupada is the most attached person in the universe. But for Krishna. And wouldn't let go of that land when everyone else gave up, the whole universe gave up. He didn't. Like he couldn't understand Mr. I don't know,
It's very polite to call him a mystic. The guy was a real crook. Go try to cheat sadhus out of huge amount of money and land. So same thing with like, it's not that when you become a devotee you don't love your child anymore because you're transcendentalist. Like if you transcendentalist you don't love your child, you're not a transcendentalist, you're just a sick person. But you love your child for right reasons, in the right way. And even more so. And the same thing, you may experience fear. In the Bhagavatam it is described that Devaki and Vasudeva experiencing fear in the jail of Kamsa made them become pure. But they feared for Krishna. And again, we try to imitate that by artificially and in a sectarian way think of Krishna as God. Which is, we do everything for Krishna, but we don't. Sectarian means you put Krishna in the center because it's a religious form of extended selfishness. Concentrated selfishness is one where you are the only object of satisfaction. And the extended is, yes, I show respect to my guru because he's my guru. And he's better than your guru. It seems like a guru bhakti, but it's not. It's another egocentric worldview. And religious people do that a lot. Are you a happy customer tonight? Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. What's your native tongue? What's your native language?
Odia.
Odia, okay. Too bad you weren't here when I was trying to speak Bengali.
He was here.
Oh, you were? Okay. So Odia and Bengali are very similar. Yeah. You don't need a translator, right?
I have one question, Maharaj. Not question. I want some suggestion from you about sadhana. So, in the busy schedule, how can maintain our sadhana and more engaged in devotional services? And another one is, if sometimes laziness will come, then what should I do in that time? And another thing is, I want to listen from you, your realization. Could you please share some realization about your sadhana? So then that can apply in my life for improving my sadhana and services. Please,
Personally, I had a service of a temple president. I think I was a temple president for 12 years down in San Diego, California. And I would sleep 4 to 5 hours a day. Not because I was Gudakesh about the need to sleep, but because there's a lot of things to do. And even came to the point where I developed heart issues, and I was relatively young, in my 30s, early 40s. And even a doctor told me, you have too much stress in your life. Those who think that devotees have a stress-free life. And so that question you asked was quite relevant, very often relevant to me. Uh, um, for some reason, I felt that if I did not have a good sadhana, and when I say sadhana, I'm not sure what are you thinking of, but for me, when I say sadhana, I refer to basic practice of Krishna consciousness, specifically chanting japa. Hopefully, some kirtana, chanting with devotees together, like kirtana, harinam, or something like that, and then reading Prabhupada's book, hearing Shravanam and Kirtanam. Reading and thinking about what I read and discussing with others what I read. And it was quite a challenge to find time for that. Even when I would sit down to chant japa, and at the temple there's always periods, typically at our temples. Prabhupada made that, for example, in Gaudiya Math, they don't have period for chanting japa, but the ISKCON temples, Prabhupada made a period dedicated just for chanting japa. And maybe during that time, devotees would come and interrupt. What about this? What about that? Personally, I had to become aggressive. Bark. Woof, woof. If you come close, I'll bite you. Not quite like that. Devotees were even afraid to come to talk to me until 9 a.m. Because at the temple, that's the time for morning program, and it had to be something super important like buildings on fire. And then also every day I would sit in a car and drive away from the temple and turn off the phone in order to read. And when I did that, then I was good. And I had to establish that in order to maintain sadhana. And I think it is very important to keep that balance in one's own life. Srila Prabhupada often referred to it, like that incident in India where Prabhupada, I can't remember whether that was in Mayapur or Vrindavan, but devotees were not there during the Bhagavatam class. And Prabhupada said this Hari Hari Bol will not last unless you come and hear, meaning you have to spend some time performing Shravanam and Kirtanam. And not only Shravanam and Kirtanam, like you have to think about what you have just read. And then, give it a serious thought. And then more you do that, more you reflect. At least for me, it has a more of a transformational effect. You start to connect things, you start to see how it's relevant in life, you start to see how deeply true it is, and that's where, for me, transformation takes effect. I don't want to say that that's the only transformational thing about it, but it's a very important one. So not enough just to hear and chant, but also to contemplate like that. And then if you do that, then you see things in the right perspective. Therefore, you can perform activities, physical activities, which are still devotional service, cook, clean, interact with devotees, and so on, but in a better way. And generally, as far as I can tell, that's how life goes. You live your life, and then there's some reflection, you learn something from it, and then you live life, you continue to live life, but now better. And so we have that same thing in our practice of Krishna consciousness. There's the contemplative aspect, and then there is the performative aspect. And, if you reduce it only to one or the other, I think you're losing yoga or balance of the two. And I could see that. I didn't want my life to be reduced to mere activities, because if they're not accompanied with a good understanding of what I'm doing, then the activities lose the most important component, and that is the attitude and reason. The reason for which and the attitude with which I perform those activities. So Prabhupada tried to point that out to his first students, followers, quite a few times. Many times he would say these books are not there merely to be sold, because interestingly enough, not a whole lot of devotees read the books like that. So that has been my attitude and my, we could say, realization of the process of sadhana. I don't know how much did you find it relevant or helpful. Hopefully.
Thank you so much.
All right. What's the time? Do we have a clue? Oh, it's 9 o'clock. We should stop. That's another thing Prabhupada wrote in his books about inattentiveness in a transcendental position. Okay, we're talking about Krishna, but you need to go to bed too. So tomorrow, rise early, chant. Don't be inattentive in a transcendental position. All right, so thank you for your good company tonight and for engaging me in hopefully Krishna Katha. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thanks again for coming and blessing all of us. Always, the lectures are always, we connect very, very quickly. Thank you. I still remember your first lecture.
Oof, better be careful what I say.
Yes, yes. Use it many times. That examples that you give, you use it many times. Thank you, devotees, for coming, and we'll have prasadam. Today is Arjun's birthday, so we have, Maharaj, with your permission, we have a cake cutting for Arjun. So we'll do Arjun's birthday, and today is also Chaitanya Charan Prabhu's birthday. He's not able to come, and I don't know whether Govinda Vilas Prabhu, yeah, his birthday too. So yeah, so we'll celebrate that and we'll have prasadam. Thanks again.
And your birthday.
My birthday is 2 days ago.
No, just on the
Yes, it was my birthday too.
She's a sister.
But again, thank you so much, everyone, for coming, and thank you always, temple management group and all the senior devotees for giving us the opportunity. Thank you so much. Wishing you guys a happy birthday,
Jai.
Jagannath Ji, Shri Baldev Ji, Shrimati Subhadra Maiya ki
Jai.
Shri Guru Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. His Holiness Bhakti Ānanda Tīrtha Maharaj, Swami Maharaj ki
Jai.
Jai.
So where do you want to do the